everyone, welcome to another episode of Q&A in Science. I'm your host, Currio. In this episode, we are going to share with you how to fight epilepsy together. But first, we will learn about the basics of neuroscience. We have invited Ashly to share with us today.
Hi, Currio.
We have had so much fun backstage dancing to Just Dance.
We sure did.
Speaking of dance, coordination is so hard. How is our body able to process all the information at the same time?
Well, Currio, it happens in the central nervous system through a process called neurotransmission, which is the transfer of information between neurons in our brain. It's like how neurons communicate in order to complete a certain action.
But how does neurotransmission work?
Well, unlike how we communicate through, I'll let you guess.
Emojis?
Yeah, unlike how we communicate through emojis, in our brain, we communicate through electrical signals called action potentials. These action potentials are passed on from neuron to neuron. The neuron that receives this action potential is called the presynaptic neuron, and it receives it through the root-like structures called the dendrites. The action potentials then cause the neurotransmitters to convert from these electrical signals into chemical signals to pass on to the next neuron, also known as the postsynaptic neuron.
But how does it actually get passed on to the postsynaptic neuron?
That's a good question. Well, the neurotransmitters then travel across the synaptic cleft. In the animation, the neurotransmitters are the circles that contains even smaller circles inside. Now, the synaptic cleft is an area where neurons are close enough to transmit signals to each other. After the neurotransmitters travel across the synaptic cleft, it binds to the dendrites of the postsynaptic neuron, and from there, the message is successfully passed on.
That's so cool! Does it only take one neurotransmission to complete an action?
Nope, it takes many neurons to complete one singular action.
What if there are too many electrical signals being transmitted in the brain at the same time?
That's an extremely good question. That would be described as an electrical storm in the brain and could be symptoms of epilepsy.
What's epilepsy?
Epilepsy is a chronic, non-communicable brain disorder in which the brain repeatedly generates small electrical impulses which travel along the neurons, or has an imbalance in electrical rhythms. It could lead to serious seizures.
What are seizures?
Seizures are defined as a sudden change in behavior because of a change in electrical functioning in our brain. Seizures can cause temporary symptoms such as disturbance of movements and sensation, possible loss of consciousness, and it affects mood and cognitive functions.
Oh no! How do doctors know we have epilepsy?
Well, patients are diagnosed after having at least 2 seizures that were not caused by known medical conditions through electroencephalogram. The electroencephalogram detects abnormal brain activity, which are indicated through sharp spikes or waves. The spikes and waves show that they have tendency to have seizures.
If the cause for epilepsy is unknown most of the time, what could possibly increase the risk of having epilepsy?
Good question, Currio. Well, the risk factors include stroke, abnormal brain structures at birth, serious brain injuries, lack of oxygen in the brain, and any brain diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, alcohol, and drug abuse.
Then is there anything we can do to prevent getting epilepsy?
Most certainly. We can start by reducing excessive alcohol consumption and drug abuse in order to prevent stroke. And if you are pregnant, take adequate care to reduce the risk of a birth injury. We can also prevent head injuries to prevent post-traumatic epilepsy by wearing protective gears.
What are the treatments for epilepsy?
Well, the last resort is surgery that is only used when the candidate is eligible for surgery. There are also anti-epileptic drugs that control seizures by reducing the tendency of neurons to send excessively confused signals.
Besides the medical aspect of things, is there anything we can do in our daily life to reduce the impact of seizures?
Speaking of dance at the beginning of this talk, dance movement therapy can get our brain active and healthy, making electrical signals run more smoothly. Moreover, dance movement therapy is just so fun. It decreases social isolation and improves patients' quality of life.
That's great. Dance also reminds people with epilepsy that it does not define them and that they can still find happiness in life despite the disability.
That's right, Currio. That's why I believe understanding the basics of neuroscience is so important, so that we can be educated about these brain disorders and reach out to those in need.
You're so right. Thanks for sharing, Ashly. And that concludes today's episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.